Hi and good morning. So we are starting off 266 to 276, the fall of Troy, and we were just about to have Menelaus and Paris have a battle, but I think Paris was enveloped into a cloud and brought back to Mount Olympus by Aphrodite. Then Menelaus was harmed. He was wounded a little bit, but it seems like the Greeks were mad at the Trojans because they violated some sort of a peace agreement between everybody because they all wanted Paris and Menelaus to fight, but that didn't end up happening. And if you want me to review the last um, reading, there's a link to me, just like some of my thoughts and themes about that. And there's a link in the last module, I believe. But I might make these into ed puzzles. So if I'm saying like, oh, they're optional, they may not be optional in the future. It just depends on quarantine and all that good stuff. So, okay, this is me trying to read through this. If you like to listen, that's great. But read along with me in these links. Ooh, hold on. Okay, so on the Greek side, with Achilles gone, the two greatest champions were Ajax and Diomedes. They fought gloriously that day, and many a Trojan lay on his face in the dust before them. The best and bravest next to Hector, the prince Aeneas, came near to death at Diomedes' hands. He was more than royal blood. His mother was Aphrodite herself. And when Diomedes wounded him, she hastened down to the battlefield to save him. She lifted him in her soft arms, but Diomedes, knowing she was a coward goddess, not one of those who, like Athena, are masters where warriors fight, leapt towards her and wounded her hand. Crying out, she let Aeneas fall, and weeping for pain made her way to Olympus, where Zeus, smiling to see the laughter-loving goddess in tears, bade her stay away from battle. Remember, hers were the works of love and not war. But although his mother failed him, Aeneas was not killed. Apollo enveloped him into a cloud and carried him to sacred Pergamos, the holy place of Troy, where Artemis healed him of his wound. But Diomedes raged on, working havoc in the Trojan ranks until he came face to face with Hector. There, to his dismay, he saw Ares too. The blood-stained, murderous god of war was fighting for Hector. At the sight, Diomedes shuddered and cried to the Greeks to fall back, slowly, however, and with their faces toward the Trojans. Then Hera was angry. She urged her horses to Olympus and asked Zeus if she might drive that bane of men, Ares, from the battlefield. Zeus, who loved him no more than Hera even though he was their son, willingly gave her leave. She hastened down to stand beside Diomedes and urged him to smite the terrible god and have no fear. At that, joy filled the hero's heart. He rushed to Ares and hurled his spear at him. Athena drove it home, and it entered Ares' body. The war god bellowed as loud as 10,000 cries in battle, and at the awful sound, trembling seized the whole host, Greeks and Trojans alike. And just to pause really fast, it's clear that like Zeus and some of the other gods can't stay out of it because they have like relationships with some of these humans, like they're their parents or whatever. Make sure that you're reading the pages so that like you're going to remember better for the reading quizzes as long as you're like looking at the page too. Doing great. Ares, really a bully at heart and unable to bear what he had brought upon unnumbered multitude of men, fled up to Zeus in Olympus and complained bitterly of Athena's violence. But Zeus looked at him sternly and told him he was as intolerable as his mother and bade him to cease his whining. With Ares gone, however, the Trojans were forced to fall back. At the crisis, a brother of Hector's, wise and discerning the will of the gods, urged Hector to go with all speed to the city and tell the queen, his mother, to offer to Athena the most beautiful robe she owned and pray to her to have mercy. Hector felt the wisdom of the advice and sped through the gates to the palace where his mother did all as he said. She took a robe so precious that shone like a star, and laying it at the goddess's knees, she besought her, Lady Athena, spare the city and the wives of the Trojans and the little children. But Pallas Athena denied the prayer. Uh-oh, guys, we got some foreshadowing here. This would be so much easier to read if Hamilton would have followed the comma rules And unfortunately, she didn't. But she has a PhD, so who am I to criticize? As Hector went back to the battle, he turned aside to see once more, perhaps the last time, the wife he tenderly loved, Andromache, and his son, Astyanax. He met her on the wall where they had gone in terror to watch the fighting when she heard the Trojans were in retreat. With her was a handmaid carrying the little boy. Hector smiled and looked at them silently, but Andromache took his hand in hers and wept. "My dear lord," she said, "you who are father and mother and dear brother unto me as well as husband, stay here with us. Do not make me a widow and your child an orphan." He refused her gently. He could not be a coward, he said. It was for him to fight always in the forefront of battle. Yet she could know that he never forgot what her anguish would be when he died. That was the thought that troubled him above all else, more than his many other cares. So he's really concerned that she will be a widow, but he says, like, I have this duty to my city and to my people. And unfortunately, it's all his brother's fault. Okay, so it says, like, he turned to leave her, but first he held out his arms to his son. Terrified, the little boy shrank back, afraid of the helmet and its fierce nodding crest. Hector laughed and took the shining helmet from his head. Then, holding the child in his arms, he caressed him and prayed, "O Zeus, in after years many men say of this my son when he returns from battle, far greater is he than his father was." Oh. So he laid the boy in his wife's arms, and she took him, smiling yet with tears. And Hector pitied her and touched her tenderly with his hand and spoke to her, "Dear one, be not so sorrowful. That which is fated must come to pass, but against my fate no man can kill me." Then, taking up his helmet, he left her, and she went to his house, often looking back at him and weeping bitterly. So, translation, it is what it is, girl. I gotta go to battle, but luckily, fate has in store for me what she has in store for me, so I'm not gonna die just some pitiful coward's death. I will die a great death if that's what Lady Fortune has in her cards for me. So this is tragic, and I guess, like, if you're American in the 21st century reading this, and maybe you're a woman, your husband has to go to war, like, I guess this would bring you comfort. Like, that is his duty, to leave his family and go to war for his country or whatever. That's his duty, and it's not. He shouldn't be a coward about it just because he's going to leave you. You also have to be a warrior woman. That's what you're called on to do. Once again on the battlefield, he was eager for the fight, and better fortune for a time lay before him. Zeus had by now remembered his promise to Thetis to avenge Achilles' wrong. I'm going to pause really fast just to make sure this doesn't freeze. He ordered all the other immortals to stay in Olympus. He himself went down to earth to help the Trojans. Then it went hard with the Greeks. Their champion was far away. Achilles sat alone in his tent, brooding over his wrongs. The great Trojan champion had never before shown himself so brilliant and so brave. He is so intimidating, girl. Can you believe it? He's even scaring Achilles. Hector seemed irresistible. Tamer of horses, the Trojans always called him, and he drove his car throughout the Greek ranks as if some same spirit animated steeds and driver. So just translation here, there's this thing called an epithet. E-P-I-T-H-E-T. In grammar, it's known as an appositive. Hector's called tamer of horses. This is a common writing technique of the Greeks. They would say Achilles, great Myrmidon, battle warrior, Odysseus, raider of cities, king of Ithaca. And if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, Gandalf the Grey, great wizard and fighter, Frodo Baggins of the Shire. And if you're a fan of history, Alexander the Great, right? So, like, epithets, E-P-I-T-H-E-T-S. They're important, and you will probably be writing your own myth, so you'll have to include these. Miss Stevens, matron of room 100. gal on gilded gliders. That's roller skates. I like the roller skate. Okay, sorry. Give yourself an epithet if you want to be fancy, by the way. All right. So Hector is just irresistible. He's the cat's meow. He's the cat's PJs, the bee's knees, and everybody's jealous of his powers. I mean, have you ever had a time in your life where you were just like shining and brilliant and nothing could stop you? You were like invincible. That's Hector right now. He's untouchable. His glancing helm was everywhere. I want to make sure this was still going. And one gallant warrior after another fell beneath his terrible bronze spear. When evening ended the battle, the Trojans had driven the Greeks back to their ships. Yikes. The Greeks are all staying in tents on the beach. If you've watched the movie Troy, you probably have seen them. And these tents are not just some crappy little camping tents. They were great tents with carpets and luxurious fabrics and stuff, so it'd be very comfortable. But personally, I would not want to fight on the beach. I would want to lay in my tent and enjoy the weather, but cover it up because they didn't have sunscreen back then. So I got to be in my tent, but also enjoying the weather. I guess that would be dishonorable and cowardly, though. I would need to fight. Okay, so there was rejoicing in Troy that night, but grief and despair in the Greek camp. Agamemnon himself was all for giving up and sailing back for Greece. That seems like good advice, but Nestor, however, who was the oldest among the chieftains and therefore the wisest, wiser than even shrewd Odysseus, spoke out boldly and told Agamemnon that if he had not angered Achilles, they would not have been defeated. Try and find some way of appeasing him, he said, instead of going home disgraced. All applauded the advice of Nestor, and Agamemnon confessed that he had acted like a fool. He would send Briseis back, he promised them, and with her many other splendid gifts, and he begged Odysseus to take his offer to Achilles. If I was Achilles, I would not accept this gift of my woman back and all these other splendid gifts. I'd say, you need to come to me man to man, and we're going to fight this out. Or, I just don't think that this is acceptable. Like, I don't feel like you're really sorry. You need to grovel at my feet, because I'm some great warrior. But if it's just me, I would be like, cool, thanks for the gifts, but please turn this woman free. Odysseus and the other two chieftains chosen to accompany him found the hero with his friend Patroclus. P.S. Patroclus in some myths is Achilles' cousin. In others, it is his lover. So just deal with it, people that have a problem with that. And Patroclus, who of all men is most dear to Achilles. Okay, so you could read into that if you wanted to. Achilles welcomed them courteously because Achilles isn't a monster. He's going to follow the traditions of gratitude, hospitality, right? So he's going to set food and drink before them. But when they told him why they had come with all the rich gifts that would be his if he would yield, and begged him to have pity on his hard-pressed countrymen, they received an absolute refusal. Translation, Achilles is like, no, I'm not fighting anymore. I'm going to sit here in my tent and enjoy my woman and Patroclus's company, and you guys can kiss my Greek behind. I had to clean it up there. P.S. This reminds me, why do people believe that Homer was a woman? That's a fun thing I didn't talk about. Because of all the motifs and all the motifs and themes of hospitality. So if you are constantly obsessive, like the behavior of the home and the hearth, like paying homage to the goddess Hestia, then you most likely are a woman. So that's why scholars think that possibly Homer was a woman. Fun facts. Okay, that's what you get when you read the story with me. You get the fun facts and the annotations and the reflections. And as a good reader, that's what you're doing anyways. You're stopping and reflecting and seeing. Okay, what do you guys, good reader's going to ask, what do you think is going to bring Achilles back to battle? You got to think about that. Okay, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to have a part 2 of this video because I'm scared the video is going to freeze and I'm here at 14 minutes here. Okay, so he refused. Not all the treasures of Egypt could buy him, he told them. He was sailing home and they would be wise to do the same. Why don't people take this good advice? But all rejected that counsel when Odysseus brought back the answer. The next day they went into battle with the desperate courage of brave men cornered. Again, they were driven back until they stood fighting on the beach where their ships were drawn up. But help was at hand. Uh-oh. Yeah. Hera had laid her plans. Remember, this is Zeus' sister wife. Sister and his wife. Talk about some Jerry Springer stuff. Some Maury here in Greek mythology. She saw Zeus sitting on Mount Ida. Oh, this is my favorite part, guys. I love a makeover part. Whenever, like in the movie, whenever the character gets a makeover, remember in Romeo and Juliet, where they like the characters before their first date? Love this part. She saw Zeus sitting on Mount Ida watching the Trojans conquer. And she thought how she detested him. But she knew well that she could get the better of him only in one way. She must go to him looking so lovely that he could not resist her. So she's going to give herself a makeover and be looking like Beyonce here. Let's see. Okay, so when he took her in his arms, she would pour sweet sleep upon him, and he would forget the Trojans. And so she did. She went to her chamber and used every art she knew to make herself beautiful beyond compare. I mean, she's more gorgeous than Halle Berry, guys, at this point. And it says, last of all, she borrowed Aphrodite's girdle, wherein were all her enchantments. And with this added charm, she appeared before Zeus. As he saw her, love overcame his heart, so that he thought no more of his promise to Thetis. Oh, look at these girls trying to fight each other with their beauty and their like charms. P.S. Guys or girls, if you don't know what a girdle is, it kind of like sucks in the fat. It's like a Spanx, or like, you know, like trying to give you that Kim Kardashian look. Okay. So Thetis also, he's no longer thinking of his promise to Thetis. Thetis was Achilles' mom. He made a promise that he would kind of like look after Achilles. And remember, Thetis is a sea nymph. She's gorgeous. She apparently got with Zeus and they had Achilles. And she's also, though, married to the guy, King Tyrannus. No, not King Tyrannus. She's married to the guy in the beginning of the story when they were having that wedding on Mount Olympus. So it seems like these gods they're not really honorable in their marriages, unfortunately. That's why this causes such a mess. So maybe this is a warning about being more straight up with your partner and being honorable and staying with them and not straying from your marriage. Okay. How many more pages do I have to go? Because I don't want this to freeze. Okay, I might do part 2 here. So you're going to just have to hang in the balance here. Aphrodite's girdle. It's got Hera looking snatched and beautiful. Stay tuned for part 2. I just don't want this to freeze.